Welcome to this session on plugins. In this session, we want to define what plugins are and how they're related to Apache Cordova. We'll look at the types of supported plugins, which are supported by OutSystems, and then there are lots of other available plugins that are downloadable from the Forge. So we'll look at those as well. And then, if you can't find a type of plugin that you're looking for, we'll discuss how to create a new plugin inside of OutSystems and what steps it may take to create that type of plugin. So let's go ahead and get started. Cordova Plugins are a type of plugin that uses the Apache Cordova framework. And this is an open source mobile development framework that allows us to use standard web technologies for cross-platform development of mobile applications. So by simply knowing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we can still create mobile apps, and we don't really have to know Android or iOS specific information. Now, what are the plugins? The plugins are code that provides an interface between Cordova and the native components. And those native components would be things like sensors and other things. So this lets Cordova bind and communicate to the standard device APIs to get access to those native capabilities. There is native code that's running to go ahead and do that work, but it's allowed to be invoked from JavaScript. So we only have to know our normal web development technologies. We don't have to know all of the other stuff. So when we look at this from an architectural standpoint, we do have this web app that can be defined that has its HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and other resources to be able to run properly. There is a rendering engine called WebView, which will interact with the mobile operating system to be able to display that information through the graphics and also interact to get input as needed. And then there's another part of the architecture, which is the Cordova plugins. And these are going to give us access to different types of services and sensors on the device through the mobile operating system. And that could be things like the accelerometer, the GPS, ability to do local storage and get access to the camera. So this can be a lot of different types of things. So these are the basic components and the overall structure or application of a Cordova application as we're using it. Now, what are the supported plugins that OutSystems makes available? Well, all of the plugins are available on the Forge, and when you go to the OutSystems Forge, you can actually go to the mobile side and search for plugins. And you'll be able to find different types of plugins, and you could search for just the plugins that are supported. So here you can see the camera plugin, the location plugin are officially supported components. Those officially supported components have these interesting or cool black icons to let us know that those are the ones that are available. When we select a plugin, we will be able to see a description about that plugin, and then sometimes it will even show us where to go get more details, and that typically is taking us to the website where this particular plugin was built to start with. And it also lets us know if there are any other dependencies from an OutSystems or a Forge perspective to be able to use this type of plugin. Now there are lots of basic plugins, and we have the camera plugin to get access to the camera, a contacts and a calendar, as well as the location plugin to get us information from GPS. And then there are a few security related plugins. So there's the key store plugin that will store small amounts of sensitive data in an encrypted way. There's ciphered local storage, which will actually go ahead and encrypt all of local storage, which could create a bit of an overhead, but make sure that all of your data locally is safe. And then you can also work with Touch ID. So the Touch ID plugin allows you to do the fingerprint authentication. There are notifications and other types of plugins. So there's just local notification where we can get a notification from the app while it's running in the background. We have push whoosh notifications that are going to get us notifications from the push whoosh framework. There's barcode scanners to go ahead and get barcodes and QRs, QR code scan. And then there's an in-app browser where we can go ahead and access external URLs inside the app so we can display information from other websites while we're inside of our mobile app. Now, those are all of the supported or common plugins that we would expect to find. What are some of the other available plugins? There's a common plugin with some different types of basic things that you will need. An audio recording, an email composer, something to go ahead and lock the screen orientation, some file transfer, Google Analytics, logging in with Google+, social sharing, different types of microblink or card I/O to interact with different cards, near field communication, 3D touch for the slightly more sensitive and sense of pressure, shaking, Apptelligent, and privacy screens are all interesting available plugins. As a simple example, here we can see the audio where we can go ahead and record audio. We got the barcode scanner, the credit card scanner from Card I/O, and an email where we're using the local or the native email capability inside of our app. So those are some of the base plugins that are available on the Forge. What if we want to create a new plugin? Well, the first step would be to find the Cordova plugin that we'd like to turn into an OutSystems plugin. There are over 1,500 Cordova plugins, so there are quite a few, and we certainly don't have all of these on the Forge at this point. So to do that, we would go ahead and create and publish the OutSystems resources in a module, and that module will obviously be contained in an app, but we can go ahead and create the application. If it has a blank module, we can then configure that module by setting the right URL to be able to use the plugin. And then we need to create client actions that are the API for us to interact with the plugin. And inside of these client actions, we'll have the JavaScript code that will be able to interact with that API. And we want to make sure that those are public so that they're reusable. And then we would publish the application, and by publishing the application, we would now have a module and an app that are configured to work with the Cordova framework and the plugins, and it would have all of the client actions that we need from an OutSystems perspective. So the API in the application is what we're going to be using inside of OutSystems. So if we wanted to look for a particular type of plugin, we can go to the Cordova Apache website, search for one like maybe the flashlight plugin, and then it will give us information about the platform, the overall quality, how many times it's been downloaded, when the last time it was updated. So there's a lot of interesting information about the plugin itself. Once we select a plugin, here we can see the flashlight plugin. We want to see its installation information about what the versions are that we can go ahead and find and get the information. And then we also want to know and understand a little bit more about its usage, because this is the real JavaScript code which we'll be able to use in the actions to go ahead and make this plugin do something for us. So this plugin detail information is usually out at npm-javascript.com, but it can be in different places. So once you find the plugin details, hopefully there's a good description there so you can begin understanding and working with that plugin. Now the first thing we need to do is set the plugin configuration. So when we go to our plugin, the module itself will have at the bottom an extensibility configuration. If we double click on that, it will open up a small editor, and in there we will need to have a plugin and a URL which will describe where we can go to get that particular plugin. So this should be a URL address. Here we're going out to GitHub, and we're able to go ahead and find the flashlight as to where that actually is. So this is just a simple JSON definition to say here's a plugin and here's its URL. It could be more complicated than that, but it can be this simple. So it just depends on the type of plugin that we're working with. From there, we would begin creating the plugin API. And that means that we would need to bind the needed JavaScript behavior to the different actions that will be available. So in this case, if we want to be able to turn on the flashlight, then here we can see that we have a client action to turn on and turn off. And inside of this client action, what we really see is that the JavaScript is just there for the window and its plugin to do the flashlight switch on. And that's going to be the JavaScript that's going to do the work for us to be able to turn on the light. So, in this session, we discussed what are plugins and how Apache Cordova is helping us be able to create plugins with the framework that they've created. We looked at the supported plugins from OutSystems and all of the other available plugins, maybe not all, but a lot of the other available plugins that are available to be downloaded from the Forge. And at the end, we gave a simple example of how to create a new plugin that you might have found in Apache Cordova and looked at the steps it would take to go ahead and make that a reusable plugin in the OutSystems world. So that's it for this session on plugins.